Hello viewers, I'm Daniel Kasahun with this edition of the program Addis Dialogue, broadcasting to you on ATV language channel. In this edition, we try to touch upon the macroeconomic policy of Ethiopia, its achievements, challenges, and the prospects. And mainly, we try to deal with this economic policy in connection to the COVID-19 pandemic. To respond to me on some of the points I raised, here with me is Mr. Kibour Ghenna. First, let's try to see the Ethiopian economic policy, the recent economic policy, which is claimed to be a homegrown economic reform. Can we have purely an economic reform that can be said as a homegrown economy?
So I think we have to define what we mean by homegrown economic policy. Is it an economic policy that is designed by Ethiopians? Is it an economic policy that takes into account the resources of the country and tries to use those resources of the country? Is it an economic policy that is basically an economy that is pragmatic instead of really ideologically based? You look at the main lines of the economic policy, and you see that some of the areas that are proposed are new. Basically, the privatization of major companies these were something that were not really part of the previous economic policy, although privatization was something that the administration of both previous and this administration have endorsed. You have also policies that encourage the investment of foreign companies on all sort of sectors that were previously considered to be for locals. Now they are very much open actually for external investors. So as you raised earlier, can we say an economic policy that is homegrown is an economic policy that will help Ethiopia move to a higher level of economic growth? This is something that needs to be seen in the future. But as it is, I think it's a fresh look at the way this new administrations want to take the country, and it's something that we will only sort of judge in the future when these policies actually are implemented. The one thing that I'm not really too comfortable with is that this policy has not been debated, has not been really looked at by Ethiopian professionals and also business people or academia. I think this is a policy that has been basically put together by the administration itself and handed to the country. So maybe in there we will see some lacuna which would have been perhaps addressed, perhaps actually commented on if it was very much open to the public discussion. But that has not happened.
There is unprecedented open up of the economy in privatization, huge sectors of the economy in this homegrown economic reform. How do you define it? Like privatizing the Ethiopian Airlines, partially privatizing the telecom sector?
Yeah, but we say partially, but once you start a partial privatization, that's really the first step, and then the next step goes up to the final stage of privatization. No, but I think in many ways these are policies that are advocated by the international financial institutions, and we are very much actually dependent on their financial support. And that financial support comes with conditions, and part of the conditions is really to privatize whether we like it or not. Actually, this has been recommended all over the globe on the basis of efficiency, basically. And so it's not really a policy that is advocated really by the government itself, but I see that this is a policy that has been forced upon the government, actually, and so there isn't really much choice. When we look at the policy options, once you go into the financial institutions program, the financial institutions world, then this is something that comes automatically.
How do you see the debt burden, the inflation, this low level of investment that we see recently?
Well, the debt burden, particularly now with the coronavirus, keeps on growing and growing. I think it's something that we cannot anymore control, actually, whether we privatize or not privatize. Actually, this is not going to make any difference on the overall package of the debt that we are handling. Basically, there was this article by the Prime Minister asking, actually, international financiers to sort of reschedule the loans. But I think the question today is not really whether we need to reschedule, but I think the question is, can we pay this debt? If we cannot really pay this debt, which I think we cannot, the question has to be, can we cancel this debt? Can we sort of bring not only the African leaders, but also the world, actually, to sort of look into this problem, which is enslaving, actually, the world's population by putting this burden on the very sort of modest or the middle class, as we say, or on the poorest of the poor, to service this debt. But I think the servicing of this debt, as I said, is not really practical. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think we can service our debts. I think the one option that is clear, that should be clear, is really to sort of argue for the cancellation of the debt.
How about your comments on the rate of inflation and also high level of unemployment here?
But the rate of inflation is double digits so far, but I think this is something that the government is trying to reduce. But as I said, with the coronavirus, with money sort of being created again and again, as you know, we've created money out of nothing for the banks, actually 15 billion the first time and then another 15 billion but a second time. That money is going to come to individuals' hands in the coming month. That would bring the inflation even higher. So basically, the coronavirus is not helping, actually, in sort of controlling the inflation. And it's very difficult, actually, to talk about a normal macroeconomic setup in this environment. I think it would be very, very difficult, actually, to sort of control your macroeconomic variables at this stage. Unemployment is getting up the roof. The business basically has, by and large, actually, if we cannot say all of them, but by and large, actually, the major sectors have stopped, actually, functioning. And so in that environment, to talk about stabilizing the macroeconomic policy or the macroeconomic program of the country is very, very difficult, if not impossible.
What would happen if this coronavirus pandemic becomes worse here in this country? What will be its effects in the economy?
Yeah, but actually the economy has practically stopped in certain sectors. It certainly is not really there anymore. For example, if you take the travel sector, the hotel industry sector, the restaurant sectors, actually these are the sectors that are hit and practically, not functioning the way they function. Actually, the unemployment in these sectors are practically high, very, very high. Now, there are other sectors, as I said, transport is another sector, but also the micro sector, that one person, the individual actually, that goes around to do business, sell its product. All these are very much sort of affected. The industrial sector is also very much affected. The export sector is practically sort of ceased to function. The one sector that has been very much hit is the horticulture sector, actually. And so when you look at the entire economic sort of scene, you will notice that this is really something that has never happened before. And every day that the coronavirus sort of is not really tackled, then every day we're getting poorer and poorer.
Any strategy you suggest for the economic actors to treat the economy in relation to the pandemic?
No, I think we need really to start relaxing. It's not that it is very much already heavy-handed in terms of lockdown. I don't even know whether we have a lockdown, although we say partial lockdown. I mean, you go into the neighborhood, my neighborhood, you don't see any difference between before and after the coronavirus. So we would sort of wonder why is it that these people are not really encouraged to go to work. I think it's time for us actually to start putting together a roadmap on how to start actually the relaunching the economy. I think that is very, very important. It's very important also because there are many, many people that are hurting today. People don't have really resources even to feed their kids. People don't have really any resources actually to sort of meet their basic needs. And it cannot continue further unless we are expecting something miraculous actually to help these people, and I don't know how, and I don't know if that is possible. So we need really to sort of also bring all those sectors that are closed to open up, and that's how we can also help businesses. Once we see those that are functioning, the banks, the government agencies that are willing actually, that are ready to help, they can easily help companies that are functioning and working, people that are somewhat engaged, recruited back actually, or brought back into the workforce. It's very easy then to help those people once they are in operation, other than staying at their homes and supposedly working for their homes, which is not really the case. We know that when we say you work from home, you need to have that infrastructure in place, and not too many people have that infrastructure in place. So.
Can we say that the Ethiopian economy is being stuck now?
Yeah, the world economy is stuck. Not only the Ethiopian economy, but the Ethiopian economy is part of the world. Is part of the world's economy. As I said, you open up the economy. It doesn't mean that Ethiopian Airlines would fly tomorrow to where it used to fly before. I mean, countries have not opened. No, as I said, this is a global problem. We have to find a global solution. We have to open up actually the economies and start letting the economy back to life, actually. I mean, if we don't do that, then it will be very, very difficult. And each day makes it very difficult, actually, for the economy to restart.
You suggest global solution or unilateral solution based on context?
On our own, there isn't much we can do. I mean, there isn't much we can do. As I said, we can. You look at the Ethiopian sort of market today in Addis, actually. The stores are not really, most of the stores are not really asked, are not really forced to close. I see many stores that are open, but the problem is they don't have any customers, actually. Why? The customers are worried, the customers are not really making money themselves, and so it's both sides. There's no production and there's no consumption. There is a total sort of breakdown of the economy. It is very difficult, this is what I'm arguing, it is very difficult as we go along in this fashion to restart the economy. The sooner we start, the better it is for everybody.
Any other possible intervention that you can suggest? Not only for Ethiopia, for the continent as a whole.
No, the continent, there is this program of the Continental Free Trade Area, which tries actually to bring all the African countries to do business among themselves. I think this has been postponed, actually. The discussion and negotiations, as you know, have been postponed until next year. I think that is perhaps the right way to do, but we have to be, quite conscious that Africa has to come together if it wants actually to address its problem together, and it's easier for Africa when they come together to move forward. As from where I sit, I think there is a reluctance now to focus more inward. That, as I said, that has its limitation. I think we need really to start opening up. The world has to start opening up and gradually actually move into a situation where things would gradually come to normal, although it's very difficult actually to go back to normal as we used to know it. I think a lot of the economies have to change, have to adapt to a new situation.
Do you see that it's better for the countries to solve their problems internally first, than coming together?
I think they can do both, actually. There are problems that we solve, but we don't have really... We will never solve our problems.
Based on the behavior of this virus?
No, there will never be... we cannot really solve our problems. Today we are in a world where solidarity is a must, actually. We cannot really solve our own problem alone, and we'll see that. We see that. We see that, as I said, if we open business, others have to open their businesses. If we want to sell, others have to be ready to buy. If we want to produce, others have to be ready to consume. So it is a very, unfortunately or fortunately, it is a very global world. I think we don't have really much choice. We have to do our own homework here. We have to start organizing, structuring our economy in such a way that we become more self-sufficient. I mean, there was a moment where people would sort of talk about, no, it's a global world, you don't need really to be self-sufficient, you need to bring, things from China, things from here, things from there, and then live your life. Coronavirus have shown us that it's not really the right way to go. I think to a great extent we need really to be self-sufficient ourselves. We need to start we need to bring the reality, we need to face the reality, and then bring an economy that is based on that reality. And that reality means that we have to sacrifice ourselves and not be dependent on the international community, because the international community can only take you up to a certain level, but not really fully develop the country, fully develop your human resources, fully develop your health systems. You have to do it yourself.
So, with regard to the homework that you're telling us, what do you think would be the major intervention areas that the Ethiopian government needs to do first?
Well, first thing first, I think it has to encourage actually people to go back to work. It has to help those companies that have potential to function properly, to grow, to create jobs, to go back actually to start production, or to start providing services, because many of those companies are now closed. So you need really to reopen those, and to reopen them you don't need really to sort of hand in money, but you need to ease their way of doing business. I think part of the problem that many businesses face are regulations here that are, in many occasions, when you look at those regulations, they're costly, and they in a way do not help business actually to grow. And so you need really to look at those regulations and try to see how you can either reduce them, or either take them out of the policy sort of space. The other thing is you need to start actually bringing students back to school. I think that's very important. We lost almost half a year schooling, although you don't feel it now. You'll feel it at one stage, and that is something that would impact actually the country. The economy, I am confident, because the Ethiopians are really very much sort of ingenious. If you let them be themselves, I think they can find a lot of way to restart the economy. So I think you have to trust also your people actually to do that.
If not tackled well, the pandemic, it affects the health of the people, then the economy, then the social and the political. Do you see any danger?
I mean, we still are not really out of the woods. I mean, globally, I'm talking about. I mean, it's a very tricky, it's a very challenging period we're living through today, because, as I said, a pandemic can destroy not just one country; it can destroy the entire world, the entire globe. Hopefully, we will not get there. And as you said, yes, if we don't tackle it quite well,
yeah, but
we may lose a lot of things here in Ethiopia.
Some developed countries are at least resisting it. To some extent. For a country
we want
like
them,
Ethiopia.
No, I want, and I'm sure a lot of people, everybody wants actually, countries to get rid of Corona and start living their life normally. I mean, you go into, you talk to people who've been on lockdown in Italy, and it's been a very, very difficult period for them. There have been a lot of suicides, there have been a lot of deaths, in fact, outside the Corona. There have been a lot of miseries actually in this place, a lot of violence, home violence. I mean, it has not been easy.
But countries like China and South Korea, they are...
Yeah, no, not only China, but many African countries are, as I said, I would put them into lucky categories. You have quite a few. I mean, the interesting thing about this coronavirus is that it seems to choose its battlefield. There are places that are left intact. There are places that are, I mean, with similar sort of environmental, with similar geographic sort of status. Some have not been very much touched, and some others are really damaged. So in a way...
But it may be a matter of time.
Well, that's what people say, but I mean, let's hope it is not. But that's what many people say. It's a matter of time, but we haven't seen it coming so far. We've seen, countries like Cuba, for example, countries like Mexico, doing relatively well when you compare it actually to their northern sort of countries, for example, Mexico. So let's hope that this virus will not really damage further. Actually, the way I see it, we are lucky among the lucky ones, so we need really to look back, and look forward and see, okay, so what's the next step? Are we sort of, as you said earlier, are we going to wait until it comes to us, or are we going to sort of decide at one stage, no, it's not coming, and we have to start actually putting our life together, putting our economies back together, and move forward? I think the choice for me, if I would sort of have to respond to your question, is I would say I think it's time for us to sort of gradually start putting together the elements that would open up the economy back to business.
So you're optimistic about the current status of the Ethiopian economy?
I've always been optimistic. I am optimistic. I'm sure that we will do well. We will do well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.